Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forbes Talks. I am with Golnar Khosrowshahi, who is founder and CEO of Reservoir Media Management. Golnar, great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Diane.
I am catching you on a great day, of course, because De La Soul, I think of them as hip-hop legends. I know them from when I was in college. Finally available on streaming. What happened? Can I say what took us so long?
I mean, you can say what took us so long. So it's the first time that this music is going to be available across streaming platforms for a number of different reasons, which the details around which are probably pretty boring for people who are not really in the business. I think you and I are of around the same vintage, so it's got the same meaning for me, and it's right around that same time, college time for me. So both personally and professionally, it is an extremely meaningful day. Professionally, because we have an artistic and fiduciary responsibility to our clients to get their music out and accessible and available to listeners around the world. So we're just very excited to be in a position to deliver on that promise today.
Well said. And of course, people can look up all the different reasons, but I do think what's interesting about the magic number, you're starting with that, and then the full catalog is going to be available in March. Is that right?
That's correct.
Was there, give me a sense of the importance of this, though, because how important are the streaming? I mean, the streaming platforms to me seem to be everything now. Is that the wrong way to look at it? Because I think it gets a little into your business model.
No, I mean, that's absolutely the right way to look at it. If you think about what the forecasts look like in this industry, it's predicted that by 2030, over 70% of the income will be coming from streaming source, from a digital source. So I don't think there's any question around whether this streaming thing is going to stick around and, sort of catch on. Whereas when we first got into this business, there was definitely uncertainty about the platform through which people were going to consume music, about piracy, just the technological uncertainty, all of that.
You're going back to Napster days with that, right?
Exactly. So those elements are no longer threats really to the business. We are in a market today where, by and large, most people are going to consume their music through a streaming source. And we only see growth forthcoming through those channels. Interestingly, you've seen cassettes and CDs come back in the past year.
There's obviously a lot of... I didn't know that.
Yes, cassettes are back now. And in fact, I'm hearing of children, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds who are finding Walkman and using cassettes.
I blame Guardians of the Galaxy for that one. But I want to ask about your business model, because we've had a lot of attention this year to artists, the power that artists have, Taylor Swift, etc. Give us a sense of Reservoir and how it works, because you basically have the record company, you've got some media management. You also have, of course, a vast publishing catalog.
So yes, we operate in a number of different places. Our genesis was in publishing, and that's when we just started buying music rights, and those are straightforward copyrights. We expanded into the record label business with the acquisition of Chrysalis and then Tommy Boy. And so, that got us very well entrenched into the label side of the business. And then alongside of that, we also run a couple of very, very small management companies. And then a really interesting part of what we're doing is as a record label publisher and a rights management entity in the Middle East. And that all goes through an organization called Pop Arabia. But it's been quite an organic path as far as the growth goes, in that an opportunity presented itself to get into the label business. And so we pursued that opportunity, and then an opportunity presented itself to grow that business. So we're really much more focused on doing the right deals for the company, the right transactions that are cultural fits, that are turnkey solutions, that give us scale, and really strategically fit in with what we're trying to do.
So I know that you got De La Soul through Chrysalis, right? Correctly. Give me some sense as to what differentiates you with the artist. You know, because artists do obviously care about the music, and artists by that I mean the songwriters, you know, as well as the performers, often one and the same. When you think about the value proposition that you bring, how's it different?
Well, I mean, I think we we are operating in an industry where you have some majors, some very large companies that probably take up 75% of the market share. And then you have a bunch of independents. We're fortunate in that we're in a creative industry. So independent, anti-establishment always has a place, and there's always room for us. And so that's a good place to be. But that being said, we take very much of a boutique approach. We have a high touch approach with our clients. So we don't necessarily have 1,000 songwriters. We have 65 active songwriters. And so we're able to take a team of 11 people and really devote a lot of attention to them. I think we've spent 15 years establishing a reputation as being creative collaborators, of being stewards of legacy assets. And we are dealing with people who are, creating music product that for them is their baby. And so they do want to be working with somebody who's going to look after that. And that served us really well. We've done a lot of off-market deals, and those off-market deals have just come about.
What does that mean when you say off-market deals?
Meaning that we've done a lot of transactions. Sorry?
I said I associate that with prescription drugs. I know this means something different in your context.
That we are, we're doing deals that are not necessarily going through some kind of a formal auction process, that don't necessarily have a representative and are actively being sold. And so those deals come about really because of relationships, and we may not be the highest bidder, but there are a lot of other angles that enable us to secure those deals.
You have a very eclectic catalog. Talk about that. I mean, in terms of, you've got obviously a strong foothold in the hip hop community. You've just talked about the Middle East. Your back catalog, I think, is pretty interesting. I mean, when you think about the pockets of value, the pipeline, what should we know about Reservoir?
Well, I think we've always taken a portfolio approach to building the catalog. So we never wanted to be pigeonholed as one thing or the other. And I think that's important because there is a cyclicality to music, and there is trend. And so what may be, 80s music may be very popular today. It may go and take a break for a decade and then, come back in another decade. So I think it's important to take that portfolio approach. There's probably about $1.2 billion of deals in the pipeline now, and it is extremely diverse as far as being publishing assets and recorded assets. It could be future signings, et cetera. We are focused on the right deals that are accretive to the company, that are complementary to the roster, and that we are taking an accurate approach to valuing. And I think, that's really our secret sauce, and that we know how these assets are going to behave within a good level of accuracy over time.
So when I see, first of all, first female founder and CEO of a publicly traded independent company, I want to unpack that a little bit. I prefer usually not to sort of focus on the fact that I'm talking to somebody as a woman, but since you are the first, why are there not more women? What is it that has, and even the fact that you're public? But let's start with just how you founded the company and why it's a space that you were alone.
Sure. So, I mean, music's always been a part of my life. I'm a classically trained pianist. I have grown up with music, sometimes forced, sometimes voluntary, practicing of music throughout my life. And my first job out of school was in advertising, and then led to buy-side music licensing. And so more, business side of things. So I'm not really surprised that I'm here with music taking up so much mind share for me. many years ago at a parent level of our family office, we acquired a company that specializes in the acquisition of royalty streams of pharmaceutical drugs and devices.
And remind us who your company is for those that don't know.
Sorry?
I said, remind us a little bit about your family. You said the family office, your dad, Hassan.
And so the family office is under the Purses umbrella, has had business interests in real estate and shopping centers, a consumer electronics retail business called Future Shop, which was sold a couple of decades ago. And the pharmaceutical royalty business is called DRI Healthcare Trust. And it was an interesting concept in that people were creating intellectual property and then monetizing that intellectual property over time. However counterintuitive it might sound, these inventors of drugs are not that different than these authors and composers of music in that they are creating intellectual property and monetizing that over a certain amount of time. So it was really the involvement in that business that forced me to start looking a little bit harder at the entertainment area and how people were monetizing intellectual property there. We didn't invent this by any means. Publishers have been around for decades, and we really just sought out to set up a business where we could invest in these rights because we really believed that there was going to be future value in content, and to do it slightly better than our competitors and to find a niche and to continue to scale the business.
So this has been a year where we, not this year, specifically 2023, but I think of 2022, one of the prominent artists being Taylor Swift, who'd had some very high-profile battles with her record company, which shall remain nameless. But do you engage differently with artists? I mean, you talk about kind of the role of the music artists these days, the recording artists. They do want more control. How do you deal with that? Or do you deal differently that you wouldn't, if Taylor was with you, you wouldn't be having these battles?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very high profile situation. And I think that the music industry generally, historically, has operated in ways that in certain instances haven't necessarily been favorable to composers, to writers, to creators. I think there are enough great actors out there in the music industry today where these kinds of things are not really likely to happen as much. Again, it's a unique example because it's a very vocal artist that has an established platform and an audience standing by to listen. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that, but it's a unique example. I think that we have always been wearing a hat that has us be artist friendly because we do fundamentally believe that the music is the most important part. So we want to be on the same side as the artists and the collaborators because having these people engaged just increases the value of the music. And being engaged alongside them allows us to collaborate better.
So let me ask about De La Soul. I know that it was it the Spider-Man movie that got the song people are listening to today on the radar? Tell us a little bit about them and because I feels like it's more of a cult following when you're talking about a hip-hop group that was really formed in the late 80s. Did that movie make all the difference, or in terms of demand, or has it always been there?
No, I mean that movie. It's licensing that music hasn't been easy over the course of the past couple of decades, and it does have a cult following, partly because of its inaccessibility. Put a velvet rope somewhere and.
I see Pharrell's out recommending what songs to listen to as soon as it goes on the platform. Basically, in March, he's got a whole list.
Right. Yes, and there's a lot of high-profile, sort of promotion happening like that. But it's so part of it has been the inaccessibility, but the other part is that we are in a year where it's the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and we are talking about a group whose contribution to a particular genre was in a moment that just can't be ignored. So it's not just that it's important that it was the combination of this and accessibility, but as well as the quality of the music and the band and who they are.
Anything else you'd want to say just about your own both pipeline and what sort of your next goals are for the company? I know that you are very active already on, of course, on the different platforms, but as a leader, as you're shaping this company, what's next?
So our goal has always been to be the independent leader to be the leader in the independent market segment, and I think we are very much on track to do that. There are obviously tactical initiatives that we seek to execute on. Our focus in the Middle East is really important as far as growing that business there, as far as being a significant rights holder of Arabic music and really penetrating different markets over there. So that's very much a focus. Our active writer roster and artist roster is something we're always focused on because these things ebb and flow, and people have different workflows and are in different moments in their work streams. So that's always been an area of focus for us. But it's very much, business as usual, heads down, continue to grow the business. And that's how we've always been. So I don't really see us shifting from that MO.
Great. Well, I know what I'll be listening to this weekend. Thanks for joining us, Golnar.